Abi nga tapos bakolon sa igay na dito mo ta kunin mo kanisa man kamo balik. Wala na mo dali. Kasi kasi pangalan at hindi kauban na hapon dyan. Nalini ko siya ng pangalan. Ha? Ipapit mo gusto mo. Kawan sa ilaha sa inyo. Ito din ako ang suka. Hindi. At hindi rin ako. Nalini ko siya ng pangalan. Speaker ko siya kami ng buntak. Architect sa Kyoto National Institute. Mga kamatandaan na gusto na nagkaroon din ako nakita ko sa isang vlog sa Siniaki. Wala pa ko kami anak. Kamsang na nila. Yung pag-dinner na mo sa country club. Kamsa na. Wala na.
Ano yung nila? Pag-person na ito sa...
Atog sa mga butang. Ha?
Abot yung mga sudad.
Atog nila sa unang batch sa kuas. Sa katong CPC. Kanina ko dito ko? Oo. Papa din na siya? Wala din na siya? Wala ko siya gadugay. Pamit niya. Wala. Balik mo sila na kung katlaw. Nag-dinner niya. Pagkaupa lang kasi. Kasi mo ba naman pa na? DC. Ay, Japan. Sige na lang, importante mo ko ang makadiri. Ano naman sa IA? Ang soft. God bless. Wala. Hindi na ako. Kaya ako na kami. Panaharo.
Good afternoon and welcome back to the conference. And for this part, the third session, we'll be talking about visions of post-rehabilitations. And our next speaker is an architectural historian and vice president of the Fuji Women's University. Please help me welcome Professor Riichi Miyake. A round of applause, please.
Thank you very much for inviting me on this very precious occasion. Since more than 2 years ago, so I had a chance to come regularly to this university because of the exchange of our university and the University of San Carlos. So I came to be more and more acquainted with the situation of Cebu rather than Manila. And suddenly, it was last year, the autumn, the calamity happened. So that really intensified my visit in order to make an investigation or some observation and other activities. The presentators before has discussed quite a lot about the nature calamity and how we should recover from this calamity. So today, just I would like to refer to several of my experiences as a curator or the conservator of the several historical buildings. Personally, I had a chance to be involved in the restoration of the church buildings not so much in Japan, but outside of Japan, Russia or Romania or Egypt or Ethiopia, these countries. So the title of this presentation is Civil Remarks on Conservation of Ecclesiastic Architecture in Peru. Just I would like to mention about the church architecture in modern ages, which is in Peru. War is the most dangerous and serious reason for this period. And especially since the World War II caused fierce destruction of church architecture in Europe, and also in Russia, and also in Asia. And secondly, natural disaster, earthquakes, for instance, or typhoons, floods, or eruption of volcano brought about severe damages to church architecture. And thirdly, vandalism, especially during the socialist period. Churches and monasteries were damaged and menaced, and sometimes demolished by political reasons. Russia is a typical case of that. And lastly, exposure to a fierce, violent climate in Middle East, African countries. Negligence of maintenance due to the lack of expertise caused gradual damage of church. It's not sudden, but it's gradual damage of church architecture. I would like to refer to several cases. The Second World War caused enormous amount of human and physical loss. And churches and monasteries were used as a stronghold for military reasons, such as Monte Cassino in Italy, or Gondal in Ethiopia, and etc., etc. And toward the end of the war, the level of damage became more serious because of the new weapon technology. Dresden, Nagasaki, and so on. As long as church architecture is a place of worship and identification, restoration, or some reconstruction is the most fundamental attitude to recover. Let's say the case of Monte Cassino. Monte Cassino is very famous because it is a place where Saint Benedictus created his first monastery in the West. So this is a place of the pilgrimage and the center of the monasticism in the Western Europe. But during the Second World War, Italy was occupied by Italy and the German force, and this monastery was fortified as a big strong fortification because it is on the top of the hill. And the monastery was, by that reason, bombed by the Allied force and became ruined. And after the war, the monastery becomes like that. It's ruined. Nothing's left. But the restoration and reconstruction started. So the experts tried to reconstruct it one by one, and finally it has become like that. It recovered the original shape, although it is not authentic, but they had completed the reconstruction works. And Fasil Gebi in a castle in Gondar. Maybe you don't know the city. Most of you may not have heard about the name of the city. And this is the World Heritage Site in Ethiopia. And I was in charge of the master planning of that city in the beginning of 2000. And also I was quite involved in the restoration program, this very precious heritages. This is the place where the first civil capital of Ethiopia was fixed from the beginning of the 17th century. And it continued until the middle of the 19th century. churches were attached. 3 churches were attached in this palace complex. And in the second half of the 1930s, Ethiopia was occupied by Italians, and this castle became the stronghold for the Italian army. Then Allied, British, they bombed this place. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's good. But the castle was ruined because of the air raid. But after the war, and Ethiopia recovered its independence, and since the 1960s, the participation of UNESCO and other foreign intervention made this place recovered and restored to the original state. And it is now becoming the most important tourist place in Ethiopia. And the Frauenkirche in Dresden, that was referred by Father Ted in the morning session. This was one of the most famous cases of the restoration and reconstruction after the Second World War. It was the middle of February in 1945. The city, Dresden, was bombed by the Allied force and causing the death of 25,000 people. And this Baroque church, Baroque city, and the church was completely ruined. And the Frauenkirche, which was constructed in the second half of the 18th century, became the symbol of the reconstruction of the city. And it took 60 years to get the original state. So this was completed only 9 years ago. Nagasaki was another tragic place in the world during the Second World War. Nagasaki was a city of Christians. It was constructed, it was first conceived as a city of Jesuits, but then taken over by the samurai government, and then it became a place of the martyr. But after the recovery, if I say the Christianism in Japan, since the end of the samurai period, so this became the places of the Catholicism, and the new churches were constructed. And Urakami Church was one of it. And this was later constructed. It was constructed in 1940 by one Japanese architect. And this place, this church, the situation of this church was the place where the atomic bomb just dropped. So just over it, the atomic bomb exploded. So this becomes completely ruined. Of course, it caused a lot of casualties. And after the war, it became very controversial whether this ruin should be conserved or not. But by some political reason, not by the Catholic Church, but by the municipality, they ordered to get rid of this one. So some of it were relocated to the park with the ruin, but the new church was constructed in 95, following the original shape of the church. So long as the authenticity is concerned, it's still controversial. Relating to the case of the damages by natural disaster, so we know the cases of earthquakes in many cities. And especially in Latin America, we have many cases because of these other countries of the earthquakes. Fires was the same. We have Japan has has been suffering from a series of fires. Let's say the case of the Antigua in Guatemala, old Guatemala. So this is still a very beautiful city, but this city is based on the ruins, which is damaged by the earthquake of the 18th century. So Flores, the capital of the Spanish Guatemala, Antigua Guatemala was ruined by the earthquake of 1770, and twice, and secondly in 1773. So the capital was removed to the actual Guatemala city. So this city was abandoned. Of course, certain number of the inhabitants continued living over there. And population growth. Actually, this city was registered as a UNESCO World Heritage. And it flourished because of this ruined tourism. So everywhere there's ruins of the old monasteries or public buildings, but it becomes a place for the tourists. Assisi. Assisi is a place of San Francisco, and this monastery was also attacked by the earthquake in 1997. And there are two levels of the churches. Upper church was seriously damaged. One part of the board just collapsed, and the fierce damages for the famous mural painting in Giotto. But the Italian experts very carefully tried to restore it. And it took 15 years. The final restoration completed 2 years ago, 2012. And the reconstruction or restoration of the building took only 2 years. But the later period was called mural paintings. Mural painting is very, very delicate. Hakodate is a city, second biggest city in Hokkaido in Japan, the northern part of Japan. And this became the place for the Christians after Nagasaki, because samurai government finally allows to open Japan for foreigners at the end of the samurai period in the middle of the 19th century. So churches were constructed, allowed to be constructed. But as a Japanese tradition of constructions, wooden construction makes the city very fragile against fire. So it suffered several times a big fire, as in the case of other Japanese cities. And the church, actually called Motoma Church, first dedicated in 1877, and then reconstructed in the beginning of the 20th century after the fire. And again, it was reconstructed after the fire. The actual church was the addition of the ruined church by bricks. So this one is the second church, and then the third church. The plan is the same as before, but the shape or exterior looking is very different. And vandalism is another case to menace the church, by political reasons mostly. Socialism has created vandalism against church architecture in such countries as Soviet Union. Confrontation among ethnic and religious communities also causes unnecessary vandalism against opposite groups, such is the case as in Kosovo or Egypt by Copts and Islams. In 1990s, the fall of the socialist bloc has generated the opportunities to restore abandoned monasteries in Soviet, in Russia, or in other Eastern European countries. And I was just asked by the UNESCO to participate in the program for the restoration program of the Romanian churches, monasteries. There is a very beautiful church constructed in 16th century, Provoda Church. It is very famous with its mural paintings. And we have created a team, joint committee by UNESCO and the Ministry of Culture of Romania and the Romanian Orthodox Church. The presence of church is very important because at the moment, Romanian government didn't have the money and didn't have the controlling power. And the project management is divided in 4 groups: architecture, structural consolidation, mural paintings, and archaeology. Mural paintings, the most difficult task. And it took 6 years to finalize the project, only for mural paintings. So first we constructed a big house to house the painters. So this is one of my ex-students, Japanese female student who went there, and she designed and she constructed and did it. So she stayed over there and managed a lot of construction site management. And mural paintings is a really interesting task. So from the very old one, it becomes like that. And the series of the works for the restoration of the mural paintings revealed the very beautiful original paintings. And for this maybe, I'm sure this is a big contribution to the history of art and architecture in Romania. But one big operation of restoration or conservation is really a big task for the history of that country. And in the next phase, so we are also involved in another conservation restoration program of the smaller church, but which is one of the most beautiful church in Romania. So it took 4 years. This is more, it's not UNESCO project. It's rather our university and other public authorities joined and undergone the works. And I was also involved in some works in Russia, together with the Russian Orthodox Church. And it was very big work at the same time. And one more experiences which I have done was in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a country of Christianity. And the monasteries are very, very old. Some derived from 8th or 7th and 9th century. Christianity arrived at 5th century only. So there are a lot of very old buildings founded by the early monastic groups. And for instance, in the very narrow valley, there is a monastery called Gundagundo, which is still, now the operation is still ongoing. We are asked to cooperate with the local government to have the restoration project. This is a very far away place, and from the exterior looking, it's a very simple very ordinary type of the buildings. But this was a place of a kind of the reformers among the Orthodox churches, what we call Stephanite, the monk who was called Stephan or Stephanos in the Ethiopian language, led the groups of the new reformers of the Orthodox monastery. They moved to this place and established their order. And there are several monasteries still very active. And we have to take care of these monasteries because now the restoration technique has gone away, disappeared in that country. So we started from the establishment of the restoration course, which is attached to the Mekelle University. And then it started since 5-6 years ago. And we had a lot of young students who cooperated with us, and they are becoming a new generation to be in charge of the restoration works. And also, we have to start for the measuring. There's no GIS, so we by ourselves we have to measure the topography and at the same time the architectural measurement. Such are the cases in my experiences. So the cases in the Orthodox churches and Ethiopian Orthodox as well. And what I have learned from these countries is, frankly speaking, we are not dependent on the state itself so much, because especially just after the fall of the socialist regime, the state itself are very, I say, fragile, very unstable. They have the budget, but they don't have the money, something like that. So the church and also the church people, that means the church community people are very active to participate in the works. So they have more confidence of to be successful and to lead the project. And our position was, although we are the experts from the period, but the first point is not only for technical side, but also to work together with the local people and find out what is the local technique and what is the most adequate way to make a scheduling, how many years it is necessary. So first, and also the training is also very important. Local carpenters or local masons, they have to learn that old technique which existed before. And we came to the final solution. And in Bohol, the situation is very serious. And it is not the case of it's only the accident, but it is a very big moment in the history of modern Philippines. So Bohol, for instance, so I don't know how many houses or how many buildings are completely demolished or damaged. But the people, so long as I had worked with them, are very willing to do it. This willingness is very important, very important. And as an expert, we have to always discuss with them and make most appropriate solution. And so we have discussed with Professor Howard a lot of things, how we are going to advance the project. But one thing I would like to say you is the evaluation of the Japanese church from historical, theological, and architectural point of view. What is lacking in Japanese is theological thought. I'm sure I have to say. But this point is very important. Is that church or monastery is not the physical entity. It's a very important content or some metaphysical word. So we have to discuss always with locals, clergies, and his history itself. Scientific and technical analysis, of course, is very important. Very important. And gathering of necessary competence and expertise. This is also very important. So those who have the experiences, those who have expertise, they have to be involved, but with the local initiatives. So international team is so important, according to my experience, because they have a different ideas, different experiences, and the what we call the presence of foreigner. What is very, it gives a stimulus, and also the new experiences. So the organization of the team is very important. So foreign experts, local expertise, and who is going to be the project manager is the one of the most important person. So training for this project manager at the same time very important, but in situ, on the site, not only on the desk. And lastly, just I would like to say, careful and patient approach is needed to complete the mission. It may take 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years. So the many buildings of the ruins of the Second World War completed after 50 years. So this experience means we have to be patient and we have to be prepared for this long-term project. So the continuation by generation, the methodology, techniques, and ideas is quite important. So this is my conclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Miyake. For our next speaker, he's a conservation architect involved in the restoration work of the 1730 Jesuit House. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with that. Please help me welcome Mr. Anthony Abelgas. A round of applause, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Professor Jimenez, for giving me this opportunity to present what we did in the 1730 Jesuit House. First of all, I will try to be in a safe ground. You know, all the speakers before me were all, expert in conservation and restoration work. When I did this project, I was really practically no idea on how to go about it. So allow me to say, if what I did was right, then I can say, well, I did the right thing. But if what I did was not right, then I can say, well, I am not an expert. So lesson, never say you are an expert. So anyway, what I will be sharing today is a personal experience and a personal observation. In 2008, when Mr. Jaime C., the owner of the 1730 Jesuit House, decided to open its doors to the public, an investigation was first conducted to assess the structural integrity of the house. The initial findings show that the structural system of the house, particularly the foundation, was in need of major repair. It was discovered that it was no longer giving the necessary structural support to carry the weight of the heavy wood trusses and the roof tile. Mr. C happens to be a cousin of mine, and that I am an architect, and so for that matter, I was immediately commissioned to undertake the necessary work. It was only then that I realized that I was not equipped to do the job. The lack of knowledge and awareness in doing conservation work among building professionals like architects, engineers, and other allied professionals and owners of heritage structures. Conserving or retrofitting a heritage structure is just a simple matter of broken and fixed, or ugly and beautified thing. One simple example, part of a wall of an old structure made of coral stone is missing or broken. What's the first thing that comes to mind? Call a mason. Have it fixed with cement. Okay? After fixing it with cement, oh, it looks ugly. With no color, it's painted. There, it's beautiful now. But is that the right thing to do? Of course not. This is a common scenario in the Philippines. Perhaps this is one of the reasons why we have so many important heritage structures that were poorly conserved or even wasted to just being demolished. Due to the urgency of preserving the Jesuit House vital architectural and structural components, rehabilitation work was immediately put in place. Although I was aware that retrofitting a structure such as the Jesuit House needed careful attention, I do not have the knowledge on how to go about it. So I decided to use a less invasive approach. I touched only the foundation to stabilize the structure. With this little knowledge, I dangerously ventured into rehabilitating the foundation of the Jesuit House. The slide that I'll be showing in a short while are the documentary of the actual conservation done. To the experts in this in conservation, these bear the amateur way the work was conducted. So here are the photo documentation I did during the actual conservation work. Okay, that's the house, the 1730 Jesuit house. That's the roof. And that's the seal that really certifies that the structure was really a Jesuit house. That's a Jesuit seat. And this is believed to be the date when the house was constructed. It was 1730. Okay, sign of a decaying foundation. The corbel was no longer supporting the beam, an indication that the pillar was slowly sinking. So this is our first observation of decaying foundation. Oh, sorry. There, a closer look of the gap between the beam and the corbel. So every year the gap is increasing. Now during the time when I took this picture, it was about 75 mm or 7.5 centimeter. There, the hollow base, another indicator of a decaying foundation. Further investigation shows the extent of decay. See, you see the base of the pillar, it's already decayed. As we excavated further, this is what greeted us. It's the floating pillar. So an urgent need of immediate intervention is needed. There are two types of columns. One is such that that terminates on the second floor. In this presentation, we shall label this as type 1. This is the second type of column which extends to the roof beam. For this presentation, we shall label this as type 2. For the type 1, it's very easy to support it. You can put the support on the corbel. But for the type 2, it's a harder way of supporting it because I'll show you see? That's a type 2. There's no way to support it. And this pillar goes all the way to the roof beam, and it's very heavy, and it's very critical because if the elevation of the pillar will change or slight drop, it will affect the roof tile. So we have to be very careful in supporting this. So what I did was to fabricate a steel bracket and installed it on the pillar, and that's where we put the support. And we have to maintain the level of the pillars or the columns. So after it was properly supported, we continued the excavation work. Now, we met a lot of problems along the way. Water flowing from the ground and the walls were continuously coming out. So we have to continuously also pump. In fact, sometimes we need to use 2 pumps to pump out the water. And then another problem is due to sandy soil condition, the continuous flowing water around the pit starts to erode the wall around the pit. So we have to devise a wooden sheet piles to slow down the erosion or hoping to stop it. There, that's the sheet piles that we it's already in place. Now here, this is a view of the pillar inside the pit. You can see the extent of the damage to the pillar. It's almost severe. No? So, okay, the decayed portion of the pillar was then cut off. No? We have to cut it off. And then we have to pull it to the side for extraction. There, we remove the decayed portion of the post. And then we bore 3 holes underneath the pillar for anchoring. No? So a non-corrosive stainless steel shafting were inserted into the holes to secure the pillar to the concrete pedestal. So we use stainless steel so that it will not be corroded. And then we put big boulders on the sandy soil for better stability. And then we also added gravel base to fill up the void areas within the boulders. And then it's compacted, no, for better stabilization. And then that's the reinforcement is put in place. And then you will see the stainless shafting being fastened to